Hello! Welcome to the biggest thing I've ever made, and probably will ever make. Let me quickly iron out a couple small things before we start. I'm ranking every episode of the 2017 DuckTales reboot, so we're not including anything from the original 80s show. Sorry if that makes the premise feel incomplete, but if you want to rank an additional 100 episodes of a nearly 40-year-old cartoon, be my guest. I ain't doing that. This video is gonna be filled with spoilers, obviously. Production-wise, there are 75 episodes to rank, but I decided to count multi-parters as single entries because that just felt right to me. So accounting for the 2-part pilot, Season 1 finale, Season 2 finale, Darkwing Duck special, and 3-part series finale, our total number of entries on this ranking comes out to... Number 69, Terror of the Terrafermians. When I did the Owl House episode ranking, the main thing I wanted to get across with the bottom spot was that I didn't truly think there was a bad episode of the show. I'm not really sure I can give that same credit to DuckTales. Don't get me wrong, I still just enjoy hanging out in this world with these characters, but Terror of the Terrafermians kind of fails on every conceptual level. The central conflict just doesn't make a whole lot of sense when put under any scrutiny. Webby and Huey are arguing over the existence of Terrafermians, so Lena leads them down into the abandoned subway system to find the truth. Webby, a connoisseur of all things magical and mystical, believes they're real, while Huey, the king of facts and logic, insists they're not. Except, as the episode itself points out, Huey has seen at least 5 different previously undocumented mythical creatures on his adventures. Every new discovery is just something he adds to his Junior Woodchuck guidebook. So why are you so defensive about this particular creature not existing? The whole conflict comes off as forced, an idea that came about from Webby and Huey's conflicting personalities, but it forgets how the context of their lives renders the point completely moot. Maybe if this was like the 3rd or 4th episode of the show, it'd be a little more justified, but this is 10 episodes deep, so there's no excuse. Anyway, since the reveal of the episode has to be that the Terrafermians are real, the entire rest of the episode suffers from having no interesting threat or exciting encounter. The whole runtime is spent exploring these destroyed subway cars, which is kind of spooky and atmospheric, I guess, but not enough to really make the adventure memorable, especially on rewatch when you know nothing crazy really happens. I don't hate the B-plot of Lena and Beakley butting heads, especially since, yeah, Beakley should be very concerned by the weird teenager who has latched herself onto her 11-year-old granddaughter. Launchpad's running bit is fine too. This is actually the first time Launchpad and Dewey get paired up or call each other friends, so that's neat. But neither of these are really enough to save what is ultimately just a really boring episode. Number 68, The Golden Armory of Cornelius Coote. So in the lead up to this video, I shared the ranking with a friend of mine just to shoot the shit and iron things out. That friend is Cropper from the Sonic Song ranking. Go check him out, he's probably responsible for like 20 to 30% of the commentary I'm making in this video. Anyway, before he saw the ranking, he guessed which 2 episodes were in the bottom spots and nailed it perfectly. So clearly it's not just me who doesn't care for these 2. I'm glad the reboot did end up dedicating an episode to Cornelius Coote and the non-McDuck side of the family, but unfortunately, the story of this one is explicitly designed to be boring. Webby leads the boys on an adventure to find Coote's gold, but the adventure gets lamer and lamer at every turn so that Webby can feel inadequate next to Della by the end. Just a boring premise for a boring episode. Not to mention that Webby feeling inadequate compared to Della is kind of silly. This is late into Season 2, so Webby has already gone on like 30 different adventures, including fighting a foul agent and an evil sorceress. I think the show really wanted Della to have some kind of moment delving into her relationship with each of the kids, but it just doesn't really make sense for her to have a moment like that with Webby. They have no reason to relate to each other the way the boys naturally do. Not to mention that Della's whole B-plot here is about her and Launchpad, which is its own annoying can of worms. Why is the show trying to further justify Launchpad's presence as an objectively terrible pilot? Honestly, it would have been better to go forward not acknowledging these 2 having the same job. I guess the popcorn twist is fun. Oh, and the Beagle Boys are here too. Boring episode. Next. Number 67, McMystery at McDuck McManor. Hey look, another Huey episode where the main conflict makes no sense. Huey wants to prove he is the best party planner by throwing Scrooge a birthday party. But when Scrooge goes missing, Huey then decides that solving this whodunit will somehow prove he is the best party planner. Just a complete nonsense storyline, and it seems like the show knows it because Louie calls it out several times. This gets a leg up on the previous 2 for at least being kind of fun, throwing in a bunch of villains, and introducing Duckworth. But even with all of that, it is really unremarkable. Number 66, The Fight for Castle McDuck. Okay, technically this is another Huey episode where I think the conflict makes no sense, but not because the storyline is illogical in-universe, just that it's a bizarre choice for the show to make. Of all the potential places from previous seasons we could have revisited, why a second episode set in Castle McDuck? Spoilers, but I wasn't exactly enamored by this place the first go around, and, as Louis so appropriately points out, we've already done the adventure here, so there's nothing really new to explore. Instead of the secret tunnels and catacombs of the first visit, we get the Closet of Bagpipes, and this statue room.
Riveting!
That's all coupled with the main plot here being about Scrooge and his sister Matilda fighting while Webby tries to stop it. Look, I know the whole family thing is still very new to her, but Webby's been hanging out with the triplets for like 2 years. You'd think she would have figured out by now that siblings just kind of fight sometimes and it'll ultimately blow over. Just a really weird conflict for this late into the series. What saves this episode is the Phantom Blot and his new sidekick Pepper, a fun choice for a foul agent that I always enjoy seeing. Number 65, The Trickening. Okay, we're out of nonsense territory and into more of my personal taste. This episode really fails for me as a Halloween special. There's just something that I find very mean-spirited about Louie's blatant disregard for Huey's trick-or-treating plan. I know we're supposed to find Huey's over-planning and controlling kind of annoying, but he seems to genuinely want to give everyone the best Halloween possible here, and they're all foregoing it for a really lame Louis shortcut. But that's not really the big thing that bothers me. What kills it for me is that they have this genuinely fun and spooky haunted house setup, and they totally undermine it with this bit that the monsters are just acting to get some candy. It feels like such a lame attempt at subverting expectations by ruining the fun thing and replacing it with the most old man yells at cloud commentary about how kids don't appreciate the classic monsters anymore. This episode could have been about the kids trick-or-treating, you know, the thing Halloween is about, or about them going through a genuine haunted house, or maybe they could face some proper Halloween-themed creature or villain plot. But we ultimately get none of that. They seem to purposely deliver the lamest Halloween these characters could have gotten, and that sucks for the only Halloween special. But all in all, I don't outright hate this episode. It's still fun seeing the whole cast in costume. Scrooge especially feels like such a crazy old man in that skeleton outfit hyperfixating on this children's activity, it's great. Plus, the Launchpad B-plot here where he's convinced Halloween is a curse that he caused is really funny, especially with Donald and Della's opposite reactions to it. So it's not the worst episode in the world or anything, it just doesn't quite deliver on what's fun about Halloween episodes for me. Number 64, Friendship Hates Magic. This is the episode where Webby makes a new friend, Violet Saberwing, and they work together to bring Lena back from the Shadow Realm. So 2 things with this. Number 1, Violet is a really boring character. She's very blunt and matter-of-fact about things, which leads to her feeling like a straight man to the extreme personalities of the rest of the cast. They never really do anything interesting with her throughout the rest of the series, so it's really easy for her to get lost in the shuffle. She's just another friend for Webby, so there can be a trio of girls in the cast. Number 2, I really dislike the repetitive friendship is magic messaging. It's already kind of trite on its own, but the show plays this card so often. It's like the only way any of the protagonists ever engage with magic, and that's boring. Other than that, there's nothing that really makes this episode stand out. I don't hate either Violet or Friendship is Magic to the point where I'd want to rank this any lower, but they both leave this episode feeling very dull. Except the B-plot, of course. Launchpad getting Beakley into Darkwing Duck is fantastic. Number 63, Jaws. Shocker, here's the other big Friendship is Magic offender. This gets points for at least originating the concept with Lena, who is still actively working for Magica, so it's at least more impactful in that context. It's a shame that the other elements of the episode can't really help it out any further. There's something oddly inconsequential about the money shark. I guess it's because the shark's first impression is it eating Dewey, and we all know Dewey's gonna survive. So the episode tries to build these tense moments around the shark, not unlike the movie that the episode is named after, but it just doesn't really land well. I do love how it all ties into the B-plot with Scrooge blowing a press interview and then being forced to give up some of his gold after the shark is defeated. Glad the B-plots for these magic episodes continue to deliver where the A-plots kind of bore me. Number 62, The Last Adventure. Oh boy, the series finale. Let's start with the good stuff. In general, this finale makes such satisfying use of all the foul agents and lost treasures shown throughout the season. Pretty sure every single one of them gets utilized somehow. I think Bradford wielding the Sword of Swanstein makes for a great final villain. Love the threat he poses to Scrooge and the very concept of adventure. The sword bringing out his inner supervillain is the perfect touch. I love Ludwig von Drake in this episode. He's such a random inclusion, but it's really fun. The entire main cast gets some great moments, particularly Launchpad, which is sort of a weird one to focus on in the series finale, but I get it, he is one of the most prominent DuckTales original creations. The one-liner of
"I'm a pilot"
when he puts the Gizmo Duck armor on is unironically one of the rawest lines in the series. I love the Donald and Scrooge lines at the end echoing the pilot. I like that Donald has plans with Daisy. I like the kids forcing their way into the adventure and Scrooge just letting it happen. I like the whole April, May, and June reference to Daisy's nieces. I like this Gargoyles reference, which is a thing I didn't put together until Cropper pointed it out to me. It's overall a really strong finale in a lot of ways. I do have some minor grievances. I don't love when shows end by putting all their action figures in a room. Looking at you, Teen Titans. The prison of wacky characters is a neat visual, but is practically insane and does take me out of it a bit. Jose and Panchito were just at Webby's party. When did they get here? Relatedly, the non-foul villains feel really tacked on here, and I'm not sure they needed to appear. The whole finale does run a bit long for my taste. It's the only three-parter in the series, and there are points where you definitely feel it. It's weird to me that Donald and Della get so glossed over in the credits. Why is Manny even there? For as cute as the reference is, May and June as characters aren't doing much for me, and I kind of feel bad for Daisy that she's stuck with these two on her romantic getaway. But ultimately, what's causing this episode to rank this low are the two main issues: Huey and Webby. I hate that they made Webby biologically related to Scrooge. It ruins so much of the found family messaging for what feels like such a cheap reveal. This knowledge does absolutely nothing for the story except muddying Webby's place in it. Can you imagine if the Papyrus of Binding appeared for Webby if she wasn't biologically related? Like, the universe fully acknowledging her place in the family despite not being related by blood? That would have been so much more effective and poignant, truly earning her way into the family square. I honestly don't think you even need to change a lot of the episode to make that work. You can say Fowl was going for Scrooge's feathers in his stem bird, but ended up with Webby's, which would drive home May and June's feelings of uselessness even harder. When I first saw this episode, I thought the reveal was going to be that Webby's parents were Fowl agents, that Beakley got killed or something. That could be a great emotional breaking point instead of the whole clone business. Isn't it weird that Webby and Beakley never get any kind of emotional catharsis moment after this? When the kids finally make it to where Scrooge is being held, maybe the big emotional moment can be Webby re-accepting Beakley as her grandmother. Maybe we even get a moment of Scrooge acknowledging Webby as family. Or hell, maybe even let the boys call Webby their sister. I don't think that'd be too far-fetched of the show, and it'd be really sweet. Louis can make a joke about not wanting to split the inheritance 4 ways. Point being, the way it is now blows and misses everything that was great about Webby's storyline. Anyway, a less emotionally charged issue, but I do think Huey gets unfairly shafted here in what should be his season. It's a shame that he doesn't really have a strong emotional through line the way Dewey and Louis did. Instead, the season became more about a checklist of foul agents and missing mysteries to encounter. Oh my god, Huey's season is like a checklist. That's actually kind of amazing. Based on the season premiere and the Sword of Swanstonteen episode, I thought Huey's arc was going to be about escaping the mindset of perfectionism, embracing Huey for who he is, faults and all. With that in mind, I kinda wish Bradford had successfully convinced Huey to attempt reclaiming the Papyrus of Binding. That could have been a great low point for Huey to rise up out of, and would have made his declaration at the end destroying the contract all the better. But alas, that's not quite the story we got. Again, there's a lot I like in this episode, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't really sour the show for me. But that's part of why I wanted to do this ranking. For years now, this finale has been my last impression of the show, a pretty hard disappointment. But since rankings go from least favorite to favorite, this is my little opportunity to change my last impression of the show to everything I love about it. So let's keep going. Number 61, Challenge of the Senior Junior Woodchuck, straight from the season finale to the season premiere. This one's just kind of bland to me. Once again, Violet gives me very little to work with, so it's hard to get invested in the whole Junior Woodchuck challenge. Huey spiraling and his imaginary guidebook are definitely the highlights, and I do ultimately appreciate the lesson of embracing failure. Very Meet the Robinsons. I really hate the B-plot of this one though. It feels sort of arbitrarily designed to make some great point about adventure because it's the season premiere, but it doesn't make any sense for Scrooge to be taught this lesson, especially this late into the series, and I want to punt this dumb bird into the stratosphere. Ultimately, I like how the Isabella Finch and Junior Woodchuck stuff introduced here ties into the finale, so really the episode does more good than harm. Might actually be the first one on the list that I genuinely enjoy from beginning to end, despite my grievances. Number 60, The Infernal Internship of Mark Beeks. This is the first Mark Beeks episode where Huey and Dewey are competing for an internship at Waddle. I think your mileage on this episode is really going to depend on where you stand with Mark Beeks. I think he's fine, but definitely overstays his welcome, even just in this episode. Like, I get it, he loves his phone, it's not that funny. Also, I low-key feel called out by this episode. Huey here is the hard worker who actually knows what he's doing, and that's treated like the good thing, where Dewey's fake it till you make it style is treated like the bad thing. I am absolutely a Dewey, just perform confidence and figure it out as you go. So yeah, let Dewey have the internship, he clearly knows what's up, check out his briefcase. Other fun things with this one are the first appearance of the Duke of Making a Mess, and the B-plot where Scrooge and Glomgold scheme against Mark Beeks together. Never a dull moment with these two. Number 59, The Living Mummies of Toth Ra. I actually really love the Webby and Louie plot of this one. Season 1 liked to dedicate episodes to Webby pairing up with one of the main cast just to get everyone properly acquainted. While Huey and Webby got stuck with Terror of the Terra Firmians, Louie and Webby get this genuinely fun romp through an Egyptian pyramid where their ideologies clash in a fun way. Louie's all about the angle, where Webby's genuine to a fault. It's a natural conflict that works great. What drags this episode way down for me is the A plot? I honestly couldn't tell you which is A or B here. The point is, the rebellion of the living mummies led by Launchpad giving them an obsession with burritos is one of the dumbest bits in the entire show and makes me cringe every time. It also means most of the episode is set in like 2 rooms, one of which is very purposely barren and desolate. Still overall enjoy this one for the Louie and Webby stuff, but yeah, it got a rough hit here. Number 58, The Depths of Cousin Feathery. Similarly to the Mark Beeks episode, I think whether or not you like this one is gonna come down to how much you like Cousin Feathery. I have no strong feelings about him, so an episode pretty much entirely dedicated to him is kind of whatever to me. Not bad or anything, I like Huey embracing his own brand of weirdness here, and there are a couple neat moments with the whole underwater lab setting. I also love whenever Launchpad is implied to go off on extensive dramatic side quests off-screen, but it's still an episode that doesn't really stick out to me. Number 57, The Lost Cargo of Kit Cloudkicker. It's the Tailspin episode, for better or for worse. Look, I love a good Disney Afternoon reference as much as the next guy, but I'm not just gonna gobble that shit up without at least some thought put into how it was implemented. In this case, I think they were so preoccupied with whether or not they could include Tailspin that they didn't stop to think if they should. Up to this point, the only Tailspin stuff in DuckTales was some passing references to Cape Suzette and the legendary Don Carnage, who is perfect. Trying to work an older Kit Cloudkicker into a world that was in no way built for him just leads to a really stilted and strange episode. So much time is dedicated to this piloting versus cloud kicking conversation when the average audience member doesn't know what cloud kicking is. And for how much it's built up, when Kit does finally cloud kick, it's really visually unremarkable as he hops between the plane wings on loop. Meanwhile, an admittedly fitting and important lesson for Dewey about not showboating means an extended sequence where we watch him keep a plane steady. They really try to make it exciting, balancing the stone of what was on it, but it's a futile effort. But hey, credit where it's due, Don Carnage is still fun, the Tailspin theme and the score slaps, this is a pretty great Della episode, the stone of what was being a big nod to the Wuzzles is funny, another thing Cropper had to tell me about. There's good stuff here, but I think Tailspin was probably better left off this show's radar. Number 56, Treasure of the Found Lamp. This is the episode where Jin arrives at the mansion seeking a lamp that Louie lost. Honestly, this episode's a lot more fun than I remembered it being. It devolves into a big fetch quest where the triplets have to go asking the different wacky residents of Duckburg about the lamp, including Duckworth, Gladstone, Doofus Drake, and finally a big standoff with the Beagles. That's a fun little premise for an episode. Meanwhile, Scrooge and Webby take Jin to Ithaquack to distract him with fake missions, which is also pretty fun. Just a good, unremarkable time all around. My only real hang-up is similar to the Trickening, where the twist of the episode is less interesting than the premise they were building up, but it's not nearly as bad here. Number 55, Beaks in the Shell. This is the Season 3 Gizmo Duck episode, something I'm never really enamored with when it pops up. I think I like Gizmo Duck as a character more when he pops up as part of the group in other episodes, not necessarily when he's the focus. Still, there's good stuff here. Fenton and Gandra, who's working for Fowl, are secretly designing a big VR project that Mark Beeks tries to take over. If there's one thing that kills a Gizmo Duck story, it's definitely Mark Beeks being used for nearly every single one of them. Again, I don't hate him, but he's definitely overused. I also think the whole VR fight suffers from a lack of stakes since it's all virtual. But I really love Huey in this episode. He's stuck trying to keep the VR project a secret from Gyro and Fenton's mom, and he is losing it at every turn. I love the whole bit where Louie tries to pose as Huey to lie for him. He is somehow the last of the family to learn that Fenton is Gizmo Duck, and it happens at the very end of the show. I also love the callback to Louie's kids. So yeah, still plenty of fun to be had here, but falls short in some areas. Number 54, The Ballad of Duke Baloney. This is the episode that surprised me the most with how low I ended up ranking it, because I do love how they recontextualize Glomgold here. Making him originally a South African named Duke Baloney, tying in his characterization from the comics as well as his spiritual predecessor, the Duke of Baloney, is really clever and well done. My gripe really comes from how this makes up a very small portion of the episode. Most of the time we are just watching Louie and Webby spy on Glomgold in this fishing district. There are still fun moments in there, but the whole thing just doesn't pack a big punch once you already know the reveal. I will also admit that Season 2 does leave me a bit fatigued on Glomgold as a whole. Yes, he's hilarious, but dedicating a whole continuous plotline to this bet he has with Scrooge is really stretching the joke for all it's worth. All that said, I still love the reveal, and the scene where Glomgold throws the kids off the boat and declares who he is in the storming rain is actual cinema. Cropper describes it as a character reveling in who they are. It's awesome. Number 53, Day of the Only Child. Now this is an episode that surprised me with how much I actually liked it on this rewatch. The only thing dragging it down this low is how little sense the premise makes. Just because you say you're an only child does not make you the sole heir to Scrooge's fortune, Louie. Both because your brothers do in fact exist, and also it all probably goes to Donald first. And of course, Dewey's whole plot is about how kicking his brothers out wasn't even a good idea, so I really don't know how this whole concept made it off the ground. But the resulting storylines are really fun. I'm quite fond of the 3 mini-episodes in one sort of format, looking at Bottomless Pit and Knock Knock Knockin' on Hootie's door. Each little plotline here centering on each of the triplets is a really good time. Huey working with the Beagle Boys is probably the weakest one, but even then it's really funny how things quickly spiral when the Beagles want Huey as their new leader. Louie meets Doofus Drake for the first time here, a character who I definitely did not like the first time I watched the show, but over time I've grown to appreciate this weirdo a lot more, if only because they use him so well in future episodes. And then of course we have the legendary premiere of Dewey Tonight, probably my favorite running gag in the whole show. Obviously this episode isn't spectacular in any way, but it's a lot of fun, and isn't that what's really important? Number 52, The Golden Spear. This episode mainly centers around Penumbra's mistrust of Della as she builds a new spaceship. It's all a setup for the big reveal that Lunaris is the bad guy, as well as finally getting Della home. All in all, I think I'm middling on the moon stuff as a story arc. There are actually a handful of moon-centric episodes all in a row here, because I just don't think this plotline really had the time or intrigue needed to stand out in a season full of overarching plotlines. It's not terrible, but I find both Penumbra and Lunaris to be forgettable in the grand scheme of the DuckTales cast, so an episode almost entirely focused on them just falls way down in my estimation. I do love that the B-plot here is just Donald desperately trying to relax before accidentally getting blasted off into space. Number 51, They Put a Moonlander on the Earth. Part 2 of my beloathed Moon trilogy. This is our Season 3 check-in with Penumbra, and it's just fine. Webby and Dewey take Penumbra to the pier for some Earth fun. This is actually the only episode this season to have Glomgold as the sole main villain, which probably speaks to some of that Season 2 Glomgold fatigue I was talking about. I am again just not invested in Penumbra at all. There are a lot of great bits here, like Gibbous becoming Glomgold's assistant, Dewey desperately trying to get trapped on the Ferris wheel, Launchpad's weird crush on Penumbra, my guy is attracted to crashes, I love it. And this genuinely heartwarming moment from Webby where she really lays out how much she's grown as a character since Season 1. Most of her bits back then were centered around her being a fish out of water growing accustomed to normal life outside of the mansion. Since Season 2, that's pretty much completely dissipated, and not in some big flashy way. She just gradually became a lot more socially competent a little at a time through the course of the series, and her monologue in this episode really highlights how far she's come. Number 50, Moonvasion. Entering the top 50, we have part 3 of my beloathed Moon trilogy, the Season 2 finale. My problems with this episode are sort of indicative of my problems with the season as a whole. I think every season of DuckTales can be comfortably defined by a single word that illustrates both its greatest strengths and weaknesses. Season 3 is very obviously structured. Remember the whole checklist thing. A double-edged sword that is both fun to keep track of and a bit predictable. Season 1 is simple. They were just getting their feet wet and exploring the basic dynamics of these characters, which leads to a really focused and well-written overarching story, but also results in the most episodic season of the bunch where the growing pains of these characters really show, which led to a Season 1 episode taking the bottom spot. Season 2 is ambitious. There are a whopping 4 different plot lines all fighting for screen time: Louis Inc., Glomgold's Bet, Della's Return, and the Moonvasion. Overall, I think a lot of these plotlines do overlap in satisfying and logical ways that really make the season incredible, but the Moonvasion is the breaking point. There was just no way to make Louis, Della, and Glomgold's arcs satisfyingly conclude in this finale. They certainly try. Della and Louis are butting heads throughout the whole thing, and Glomgold's final scheme is technically what finally throws Lunaris off, but it all feels so crammed in and overstuffed. Glomgold fatigue is at its absolute peak here, entertaining another cockamamie scheme in the middle of an alien invasion, even though the bet has already been resolved. Meanwhile, the kids are purposely being left out of the action, and Louis comforting Della with her lullaby is sweet in theory, but comes out kinda awkward in the moment, especially with Louis' falsetto. And of course, Lunaris is not a particularly compelling villain, easily getting beat out by Magica and Bradford in both intimidation and character depth. This episode still has a lot of great moments: Della finally reuniting with Donald, the Mickey Mouse watermelon, this awesome shot of the Duck adults mirroring the kids, the charge into the mansion, the final space battle to the moon stage theme. It's a really fun episode, but it just fails to bring the whole season together, especially when compared to the episodes that immediately precede it. We'll be talking about those a lot later, because they are the satisfying, multifaceted conclusion this season deserved, while the Moonvasion feels kind of tacked on at the end for spectacle. Season 2's ambition is its greatest strength when it all works, and its greatest weakness here at the finish line. Number 49, The Beagle Birthday Breakout. This is the one where Webby meets Lena. Compared to the future episodes focusing on these two, this first one feels a lot more natural and fun, like they're actually becoming genuine friends. I really only have minor gripes here. The setup of the boys leaving Webby out felt a bit contrived. They do this big thing with all the different Beagles, which is fun, but I think it would have landed better if there was more than one Beagle Boy episode up to this point. The British accent bit is not funny, and I kinda hate that that's the thing they keep bringing up. Thankfully, the rest of the episode is pretty funny. Again, I do like the different Beagles. This bit with the boys all talking at the same time is great, the way they turn all the Beagles against each other is perfect, and the ending teasing Magica is phenomenal. A solid episode with enough little problems to drag it down. Number 48, The Phantom and the Sorceress. The girls go to the home of Magica Dispel in the hopes of Lena learning how to better control her magic. The last Friendship is Magic episode for a while, this one is hard carried by Magica, the Phantom Blot, and my boy Gladstone Gander. Him being distraught after losing his magical luck is such a perfect running gag that just keeps getting better as it goes along. Magica is as fun as she always is, and finally letting her have her powers back is great to see. And of course, I love the use of this classic Mickey Mouse villain in the Phantom Blot. Such a cool and intimidating presence. He may very well be my favorite foul agent. But this episode is definitely still dragged down by the Friendship is Magic stuff, and I really hate Lena's magical girl design here. I know much of her standard design is sort of derivative of Magica, but I don't know, she kept her look well after she was freed of Magica. I thought she liked it. Seeing this bright blue anime design just feels really out of character. Still, this episode has more good in it than bad, even if the bad is the primary focus. Number 47, The Duck Knight Returns. This is the Season 2 episode where Launchpad and Jim Starling sabotage the new Darkwing Duck reboot movie. But really, it's all a vehicle to introduce a proper Darkwing Duck character. I think this episode was really stuck between a rock and a hard place. When Season 1 established that Darkwing Duck was a show in-universe, it was really clever and worked well for the story. At the time. So, much like Tailspin, when they eventually decided they wanted to do Darkwing Duck more properly, they really had to bend over backwards to make it work while still committing to the idea of the in-universe show. Ultimately, I'm glad they did because I love the Darkwing Duck stuff after this. But it's hard not to watch this episode and see a really clumsy stepping stone. The old Darkwing Duck actor and the new Darkwing Duck actor are fighting over who gets to be Darkwing Duck, and it's all in the context of a movie, but at the end, Launchpad convinces the new Darkwing to be a real-life superhero anyway. It's all just a bit convoluted. I do appreciate the effort on display here. The new actor's speech in the trailer really showcases how much Darkwing Duck matters to these people, and I'm really happy to see it get so much love. but I can't help but think this episode tripped over itself so that future episodes could soar. I do love the Scrooge and Dewey B-plot. I always enjoy when they lean into Scrooge's old-fashioned notions. Still mad that they never did anything with Negaduck. Should have been a foul agent or something. But with that, we've made it through 23 entries on this ranking, and thus the entire bottom third. I'd say these are all the episodes I had some kind of major issue with. The next 23 are the middling group. Nothing outstanding, but certainly solid episodes. You'll forgive me if I try to run through them a bit quickly, since the middle chunk is inevitably the least interesting to talk about. Number 46, The Dangerous Chemistry of Gandra D. It's the Season 2 Gizmo Duck episode where we meet Gandra D. Generally, I really enjoy the complete overhaul this character got from the original show. This episode reminds me of Iron Man 3. It's all about the question of who's the hero without the super armor. Sort of an inevitable question with characters like this that is fair enough to explore. I love the Huey and Webby bits in this as they really force the romance. But you know, it's another Gizmo Duck episode with Mark Beeks as the villain. Nothing terribly remarkable. Number 45, The Forbidden Fountain of the Foreverglades. Scrooge and Webby race Goldie to the Fountain of Youth. I always love whenever Goldie O'Gilt appears, just a really fun foil and romantic interest for Scrooge. This is definitely her least impactful outing, but still serves to satisfyingly wrap up her arc. Love that seeing Louie is what finally gives her the push to go back and save Scrooge. I will say, a lot of this episode hinges on Scrooge and Goldie becoming younger through the fountain's waters, but their young designs don't really read super well. They kinda just gave them longer hair. Whatever, not a big issue. I do also like the triplet B-plot of Dewey taking over as the eldest. Plus it's fun that Louie's the one to figure out the Ponce de Leon twist. Oh, and Rocker Duck returns in this episode. I nearly forgot about him. And that's all I have to say about that. Number 44, The Impossible Summit of Mount Everest. This episode was always a weird one because it originally aired out of order. I think they held off on it just so that it would line up with Christmas. So what should have been one of the earliest globetrotting episodes, the first proper Huey episode, and the first pairing of Dewey and Webby, got delayed to the point where it was too late to really serve its proper function. Which is a shame because it does a really solid job in all three of those camps. A fun climb up a mountain with some cool twists and good bits. I especially love the C-plot of Launchpad facing ice fever and Louie outconning the guy who conned him. Number 43, Who is Gizmo Duck? Alright, last Gizmo Duck thing for a while, this is the one where Fenton sells the armor to Waddle and Mark Beeks totally takes over. After an episode or two of build-up, this is the one that really solidifies Gizmo Duck's place in the show. Huey becomes his go-to partner here, Mark Beeks establishes his long-standing rivalry, Scrooge at the end officially sponsors Fenton as Gizmo Duck, and Gyro begrudgingly goes along with all of it. This makes it a pretty fun episode to look back on, before all this stuff was just a given, but I'm still of the mind that Gizmo Duck works better as anything but the main focus of an episode. If you know which Gizmo Duck episodes are left to be ranked, you'll know exactly what I mean. Still a good time though. Number 42, Storkules and Duckburg. Okay, now we have a string of some plot episodes. You know, episodes that provide some kind of important checkpoint or update on the main serialized story, but are otherwise kind of unnotable. This one has Louie hiring Storkules for Harp Be Gone, the first of several Louie Inc. ventures. It's fun. I like Donald dealing with Storkules as a roommate, I like the ending bit with Louie helping Scrooge's new lemonade business, the legendary return of Dewey tonight. It's a good time, just not an outstanding time. Number 41, The Secrets of Castle McDuck. Hey, there's the first Castle McDuck episode! This one is hard carried by the scene between the triplets where Huey and Louie discover that Dewey's been investigating their mom without them. Huey's vocal outrage juxtaposed with Louie's little,
You kept a secret about Mom. That is not okay.
and the big reconciliation punctuated with the ghosts of McDuck's past helping them out. It's a great ending. The entire rest of the episode is alright. I think I'm just not terribly enamored with the setting. Again, how was this the place we returned to for another round? Scrooge fighting with his dad the whole time was a bit grating for me, and I'm not in love with the recontextualization of the number one dime story, but still a solid episode. Oh, and the way they write Webby out of this one is so funny. She just breaks down with a joy overload. Perfection. Number 40, Escape from the Impossibin. This episode is the immediate fallout of everyone learning that Fal's back. Scrooge has Della and Louie test his newly upgraded bin security while the others train back home. The different wacky escape rooms of the bin are definitely the highlight, as well as this confrontation between Webby and Beakley. But this is as plot-centric of an episode as you can get. The Ducks need to react to having learned about Fal, so this is the episode where that happens. Fun for what it is, but doesn't really stand out. Number 39, Nothing Can Stop Della Duck. This is Della's big return, where she finally reunites with Scrooge and meets her kids for the first time in one of the single best scenes in the show. I love how anytime they have all the boys react to something, they are so distinct and well characterized. Dewey jumps into his mother's arms, Huey asks a million questions, and Louie convinces himself it must be some kind of con or trick before finally giving in. It's a beautiful moment. The rest of the episode's just fine. It's pretty much everyone registering the emotional whiplash of having Della back, with Louie in particular being resistant to the change. It's an absolutely needed episode since adding Della to the cast is such a huge shakeup, but it's hard to really delve deeper into anything in the context of this group setting. The way Della changes the family dynamic becomes more interesting when later episodes focus on her paired up with another character. But considering how much this episode had to make Della's inclusion in this family work, it does do a great job. Number 38, The Rumble for Ragnarok. A break from the plot stuff, I love that the premise of this one is foreshadowed by a throwaway Scrooge line in Season 2. Scrooge must face the World Snake Jormungandr in a wrestling match for the fate of the world. This is one of those random standalone episodes that just makes really great use of the entire cast. Dewey's the main focus here with his inability to be the heel, but Huey's got a funny side plot trying to commentate and just not getting it next to Launchpad's natural energy. Louie's selling merch the whole time, tone-deaf Scrooge is completely failing to comfort his nephews, Webby and Beakley get to casually kick the asses of Norse gods, everyone's firing on all cylinders. As a certified Dewey fan, I do think the conflict here is a bit much. My guy, please just get over yourself, but it's all still a great setup for a fun episode. Number 37, The Lost Harp of Nirvana. Here's another Season 3 episode that does that thing I just said about using the entire cast very well. But I like the core conflict here even more. Webby and Louie butt heads about the intentions of the merpeople, while the rest of the family try to win them over to locate the Harp of Nirvana. This is such a natural progression from the Webby and Louie conflicts of past episodes like the Toth Ra one, and throwing a dishonest and overprotective Beakley in there to drive it all home works very well. It's a little weird that Webby gets so disheartened by it, since she has had no problem calling out untrustworthy people in the past, but it works for this episode. Scrooge getting fed up with the hippie lifestyle of these mermaids is comedy gold, especially with Donald effortlessly relaxing alongside them. This whole bit of Della hating fish kind of reads to me as the writers struggling to figure out Della's place in the larger family dynamic of a random adventure, but it's fun all the same. Number 36, The First Adventure. This episode's just cute, a flashback to Scrooge's first adventure with Donald and Della. In hindsight, this episode is incredibly pivotal both for establishing the Papyrus of Binding, as well as Bradford's whole motivation and long-term goals. If you're a big Bradford fan, I imagine you owe it to this episode. His dynamic with Black Heron here is arguably the best part, while the duck stuff is cute, but definitely done better in the last flashback episode. Russie Taylor, this is not, and I notice it every time. But I do love
Gotta eat the rich uncle!
Can't wait for another 20 or so years to pass and for Scrooge to have to be reminded of how fun adventure is by another set of kids he's loosely related to. Number 35, The Other Bin of Scrooge McDuck. Back to the plot stuff, this is my second favorite Lena episode as she and Webby explore Scrooge's other bin in search of his number 1 dime. This one's really held up by this final nightmare sequence where Lena sees what exactly Magica will do to Webby once she rises to power. It's horrifying and perfectly positions Lena for redemption, only for Magica to forcibly strip that opportunity away from her. It's so haunting and incredibly effective. Too bad the B-plot of this one sucks. I hate this dumb Sasquatch bro, and he single-handedly dragged this episode down at least 5 spots. Number 34, The Spear of Selene. This is the episode where the ducks first go to Ithaquack so Dewey and Webby can investigate the Spear of Selene. Yeah, based on that title, I wouldn't blame you for thinking of like 3 other episodes before this one. The main conflict here is Dewey and Webby debating whether or not Della was a bad person, which is a strong and interesting emotional hook that gets a lot more complicated when you know what actually happened and how much the show chooses not to blame Della for it. We'll talk more about that later. Meanwhile, Scrooge, Donald, Huey, and Louie deal with Zeus and Storkules for the first time. Always love a petty and villainous interpretation of the King of Gods, but these two will definitely get their finest hour much later. This Dewey line lives in my head rent-free.
Okay, stop assuming I know things. Like baseline, assume I know nothing.
Dewey's my favorite character. Have I not made that clear yet? Love this loser. Number 33, The Split Sword of Swanstantine. This feels like the promise of Season 3's premise fully realized. It's another 3-in-1 episode featuring a pair of kids versus a foul agent, while Scrooge fights Black Heron in the background. I love that the excuse for Lena and Violet tagging along is just that they were there having a sleepover and no one really noticed. I swear, every plot with the girls always has to center around a sleepover. Anyway, we get Dewey and Webby versus Gandra D, which is a cute little working together moment from a pair we've seen all too much of by this point in the show. Next is Louie and Violet versus Rocker Duck. I love how they make perfect use of relatively underpowered characters in this matchup. They designed this Spice Challenge setup for the strengths of these three characters specifically, and it's awesome. Best Violet moment in the series for sure. Finally, there's Huey and Lena versus Steelbeak. Lena magically plays out every possible outcome of this encounter until Huey is forced to give in to the Duke of making a mess. Probably the best single moment of character growth to come out of Huey in his season, and I appreciate it. That's 3 for 3 solid little stories. Banger episode. Number 32, Raiders of the Doomsday Vault. Here's the last big plot episode of the bunch. The rest are all up in the top third of the list. Dewey and Della break into the Doomsday Vault of Ludwig von Drake, who absolutely steals the show. Cropper described him as the most one-to-one inserting of a Disney character into DuckTales, and yeah, I probably agree with that. He's singing a song about colors. It's literally Wonderful World of Color. I can't. Anyway, this was the Della and Dewey episode that needed to happen since season 1 centered around Dewey's search for her so much. Dewey finally gets to have his dream relationship with his mom, and it makes for one of the most compelling Della episodes in the show, as neither wants to disappoint the other. Meanwhile, Scrooge is tailing them while chained to Glomgold. Probably the most needless Glomgold inclusion in the season. Feels like he's just here to remind us of the bet again. But Scrooge gets to share his own frustrations with having Della back in his life and finds out that she has really grown up a bit since the moon. A really important episode for placing Della into the lives of two major characters. Oh, and I obviously love that they're jamming out to Powerline. Number 31, The Outlaw Scrooge McDuck. This is the Old West episode with Scrooge and Goldie. Just a fun little flashback into Scrooge's prospector years, introducing us to Rocker Duck and Gyro's Time Tub. They honestly don't flash back to Scrooge's past nearly enough in this show. It's always a great time that really adds to the legend of Scrooge McDuck. And of course, I'm always thrilled to see him play off of Goldie. I especially love Goldie's song on the train. I mean, all the songs in the show were destined to be great. Have you heard the theme song? I also love the ending tease of Louie inviting her to the mansion. A perfect setup for another great episode we'll get to later. Not much else to say. It's just a fun watch. Number 30, Day Trip of Doom. This is the first new episode after the two-part pilot, and does a lot of heavy lifting in establishing the status quo of the show effectively. I mentioned in the Owl House ranking that episodes like this can tend to be a bit underwhelming, but Day Trip of Doom dodges any conceivable pitfall I'd usually have. At its core, it is a very basic premise one might expect from a pilot follow-up still getting used to its core cast. The boys take Webby to Funzo's where she's a bit of a social wreck. But it's a story that is sorely needed at this point in the show's life. One of the selling points of this show is that the kids of the original DuckTales, basically 4 palette swaps of the same basic character, now had distinct and memorable personalities. The pilot does a great job introducing that, but doesn't really get to flex what that means because so much time is dedicated to their budding relationship with Scrooge, as it should be. So, for the very next episode, Scrooge is basically entirely absent and it's just the 4 kids playing off of each other. And while Webby definitely got a strong introduction in the pilot, they fold her into the group of kids pretty quickly to keep things moving. But here her eccentricities and unique position in the group dynamic get the attention they deserve. And on top of that, we get the proper introduction of the second most recurring villain of the show, the Beagle Boys, an essential group of thugs for any DuckTales adaptation, only second to the pilot's Glomgold in terms of presence. But that's not even covering the B-plot, which is just as important. Beakley and Donald butt heads over their new living situation. It's easy to forget just how little screen time Beakley gets in the pilot. There was so little room for her. This is the episode that properly sets her place in the show in a storyline filled with great comedy, which is of course helped by Donald, who definitely has a stronger pilot presence, but still greatly benefited from the continued focus. Obviously, his place in the new living situation would need to be addressed, but more importantly, I feel like his plot here exists just to remind us that, despite the new context, this is still the classic Disney character we all know and love, getting into all kinds of hilarious antics. The perfect plotline for this point in the show, expertly crafted to better establish everything the pilot couldn't. I don't have a great pulse on how much love these early DuckTales episodes get nowadays, but I really appreciate this era of the show when everything was fresh and so many elements were sliding into place so perfectly. There's a reason this show got so much positive attention so quickly, even before the serialized mystery, spectacular finales, and constant Disney Afternoon cameos. There was just such a strong sense of character writing and well thought out scenarios that really made this show shine. Well, that was a lot of compliments for number 30 on the ranking. Guess we've got a lot of bangers still to go. Number 29, Beware the Buddy System. It took them 15 episodes to finally dedicate one to Launchpad. This is the one where Launchpad thinks his job is at stake because of Mark Beek's new self-driving robot, but this episode's probably more memorable as the introduction to both Darkwing Duck and Gizmo Duck. I cannot stress enough how perfectly done the Darkwing Duck stuff is here. They could have stopped at just making Launchpad a fan of this in-universe show as a reference to him being a main character in that actual real-world show. But they go one step further and so perfectly tie the mantra of Darkwing Duck, "Let's get dangerous," into Launchpad's whole character philosophy. He's the crazy driver and pilot who will take Scrooge anywhere and crash while doing so in the name of living dangerously. That is his calling and what makes him who he is. You couldn't ask for a better deconstruction of a blatantly comic relief character. And on top of that, we get to meet Fenton Crackshell Cabrera and Gizmo Duck. Again, I think Gizmo Duck's at his best when he's not the sole focus of an episode. Seeing this lowly intern rise above his station and become a hero after being inspired by Launchpad's bravery is a perfect way to endear us to him and circles back to the Darkwing Duck stuff so naturally. Launchpad loves superheroes, he models his life after one, and he naturally inspires others to be heroes. Some of the best integration of other Disney Afternoon properties this show has. Number 28, Astro Boy. What do you know? My favorite Gizmo Duck episode is not only one where he's not the main focus, but also the only one where the villain isn't Mark Beeks. Who could have seen this coming? This episode is a big love letter to Astro Boy and anime in general, which is a bit of a full circle moment since Disney Comics did inspire a bunch of anime and manga, including Astro Boy. That's another Cropper factoid for you, cause I sure as hell did not know that before he told me. But even without that context, this episode just kicks ass. Gizmo Duck vs. Boyd might be the most well-animated fight in the show, but I especially love what this episode does for Gyro Gearloose. He's always been a fun presence, but definitely a bit overly cynical and obnoxious from time to time, never really getting a dedicated episode to make him more likable, until this one. We get to see how he got so jaded and how much he wants to create good things but gets sabotaged at every turn. I love the use of the old Gyro design for these memory playbacks. It really puts the rework of the character for the reboot in a whole new light. I never expected to care about a Gyro-focused story like this, especially with Boyd, a random bit character from Season 2, being the main driving force behind it. But it was just so well done that I can't help but love it. It honestly just makes me upset that more Gyro/Gizmo Duck episodes weren't like this, with fresh settings and villains, interesting character backstories, and truly amazing animated action. Number 27, The 87-Cent Solution. This is the funniest episode of the show, no doubt in my mind. Even before the obvious scene, the setup here is hysterical. Scrooge obsessively tries to find the person who stole a mere 87 cents from his money bin. He goes mad as one by one his family loses faith in his health. This is absolutely at its peak when Scrooge makes a ransom video for his poor lost coins. Again, Scrooge just acting like an insane old man over the smallest slight against him is comedy gold. Oh, but that's not where the real gold lies, no. To no one's surprise, the real gold lies with Glomgold. He struts into Scrooge's funeral in a white suit, making it rain while dancing to DJ Khaled's All I Do Is Win as the family looks on in horror. This alone justifies the entire Glomgold bet plotline. He then proceeds to twerk on Scrooge's corpse and try to climb up onto the coffin. Owlson then forces Glomgold to sit down and calmly listen to the eulogy, but Huey attributing Scrooge's death to illness is something Glomgold can't stand for. He wants, no, he needs the credit. So he screams out that he was in fact responsible for Scrooge's death, again, in the middle of a funeral, and goes on a whole rant explaining his sinister plot where he spends a year in a staring contest with a baby, dresses in a devil costume just for kicks, licks all of Scrooge's belongings and furniture, and for once in his villainous career, nearly gets one over on old Scroogey. But, of course, it was not to be, and we get a perfect ending bit. What do you do the next time your uncle goes mad with suspicion?
Call Mrs. Beakley.
Fake Scrooge's death.
I have no intelligent commentary to make about this episode, it's just fucking funny, man. It has never failed to make me laugh, and I don't think it ever will. Number 26, How Santa Stole Christmas. We finally get the answer to one of the show's longest standing questions. What's Scrooge's beef with Santa? This bizarre rivalry was referenced at least 3 times, going all the way back to the Neverest episode. And, kind of like Rumble for Ragnarok, I don't think anyone expected anything to come of it. This is just a fun running gag, right? Nope. Here we are 2 seasons later faced with the reality that, back at the inception of the whole Christmas thing, Santa wanted to give things out for free, while money-grubbing Scrooge could not accept participating in free handouts. I love how this episode unapologetically makes Scrooge the villain of this story in a way that's so perfectly in character for him, and by the end, the attitude of Scrooge's past softens in the modern day, showcasing how much he's grown. That's like the coolest possible way to handle a Scrooge flashback story. Parallel a modern day conflict and let Scrooge come around this time. Couple that with Webby in the background trying to stick by Scrooge's side, but the magic of Christmas can't help but worm its way into her heart. It's just such a sweet episode. I feel like I never really gave this one a fair shake when it first aired, because I was comparing it to the show's other Christmas special, which we'll get to. But on this rewatch, I've come around to really loving this one as well. This show just doesn't miss when it comes to Christmas. Number 25, A Nightmare on Kilmotor Hill. Crazy episode title considering the show never references Kilmotor Hill or why it's called that. Generally love the episode titles in this show for the record. They can be a bit wordy, but they're so excited to be what they are. Anyway, finally we get to my favorite Lena episode. The kids explore each other's dreams while Lena's nightmares of Magica seep in. On a surface level, it's just fun to explore everyone's dreams. I love that Webby's and Dewey's, the creatives, are really in-depth and explorative, while Louie, Huey, and Violet take a far more straightforward approach. But the real highlight here is Lena and Magica. At this point in the show, we had no clue what was going on with Magica since the season 1 finale. She was this looming presence in the background, oft mentioned but never shown. This episode was finally the payoff. Magica invades Lena's dreams and nearly turns the rest of the kids against her. And it all builds up to the reveal that she's totally pathetic now. This dream thing was a last-ditch effort to reclaim her power, and it failed. What a perfect punchline. She gets one last episode to be the most intimidating thing in the show before the fallout of season 1 finally shows itself. I think it's easy to understate how well Magica works as a comedic villain, even when she does have her magic. So seeing her powerless is just a fun new angle for this recurring villain going forward, and makes for some great gags down the line. All that bundled with a strong Lena storyline that isn't too heavy-handed with the friendship is magic stuff makes for a fantastic episode. Number 24, The Missing Links of Morshire. This is the golf episode. Remember how I said that Lost Harp of Nirvana and Rumble for Ragnarok were really strong standalone episodes where the whole cast has something fun to do? Well, The Missing Links of Morshire is my favorite episode that does that. Everyone's firing on all cylinders. Dewey is showboating with his newfound golf skills, Scrooge can't handle being second best at something, Glomgold is failing spectacularly at every turn, Louie's making a quick buck as Glomgold's caddy, Webby is setting off fireworks as the for sure biggest sports fan ever, Huey is trying to calmly commentate over the event, and Launchpad is crashing Huey's go-kart. Everyone is playing off of each other fantastically, and it makes for a really fun family adventure, which is what this show's about at its core. Sure, there's no major plot developments or outstanding character growth, but this is an episode I'm just happy to rewatch anytime. And with that, we're now entering the final third of the list. I would say these are the truly standout episodes, the best of the best. But with how much I've been praising the entire top 30, we've really passed that threshold a while ago. So let's keep the ball rolling. Number 23, New Gods on the Block. This is the episode where the kids audition to be Olympian gods. A really fun concept that perfectly showcases the unique strengths and flaws of all 4 kids. No matter which kid is your favorite, their audition scene from this episode has gotta be like a top 10 funniest scene for each of them. As a big Dewey guy, this is undoubtedly the case. I really appreciate Della and Scrooge in this one. This is one of the times where Della very naturally slots into the premise as the supportive, encouraging figure, while Scrooge's one-track mind blinds him to how bad he's making the kids feel all throughout. Very solid character pieces for the both of them. Random thing, but the backup team Scrooge is forming features Penumbra, which surprises me since they barely know each other. This is also the standout Storkules and Zeus episode. We finally get some major Olympian action with this Titan and it rules. But the real reason this episode ranks so highly is the B-plot checking in on Donald and Daisy's new relationship. I've talked at length about this moment where Daisy recognizes red flags with Donald and nearly calls the whole thing off. A stark contrast from the toxic bickering that usually pervades this relationship, and I think it's also interesting and well handled. It makes me wish that we got 1 or 2 more episodes with Donald and Daisy in this dating stage, but the one we did get is a fantastic showcase of what a healthy relationship between these two could look like. Number 22, Whatever Happened to Della Duck? This is a big one, the episode that properly introduced us to Della Duck and explored her time surviving on the moon for a decade. I feel like the conversation of whether or not Della should be judged for taking a space joyride while expecting kids ultimately has to circle back to this episode. I think from a writer's perspective, Della has been judged. She spent a decade alone on the moon with nothing but black licorice to eat. She has suffered enough. And her dedication to get back to her family through every second of that suffering shows that her heart is in the right place. So to dredge up that old conflict, to be mad about what happened to Della, something that was explored pretty fully at the end of season 1, it would just be repetitive. It's far more interesting to now untangle what it means to have this new person around and see what new conflicts arise from that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This episode had the impossible task of endearing us to what would become a brand new member of the main cast. While I'm not always on board with how they implement Della into the family dynamic, there's no doubt that this was the perfect introduction to her character. She's funny, intelligent, daring, adventurous, definitely a bit impatient and easily frustrated, but kind, caring, and desperate to be the mother she's supposed to be. She believes wholeheartedly that she's the coolest mom in the world, and that drives her every action. All this to say, Della's a lot of fun. A well-realized new character for the Duck universe, introduced expertly through the course of this episode. Couple that with more new renditions of the Moon Stage theme, and the first real glimmer of hope that Della might actually make it back home, and we've got a real winner on our hands. Number 21, the most dangerous game, Night. So now we get to an interesting little section of the ranking. I've got 4 different Louie episodes all in a row here. Most of these are part of his arc in season 2, and thus sort of blend together in my head. They're not all lumped together here. We talked about Storkules and Duckburg a while ago, and 2 really standout episodes from this arc are further up in the ranking. But I guess I feel a need to talk a bit broadly about the arc here to justify having all these episodes in the same spot. Long story short, I really like it. Unpacking what exactly Louie's place in this adventuring family is when he's not particularly skilled at adventuring is interesting, and leaves this season feeling more like a character study than the other 2. We already talked about how season 3 kind of failed Huey, and while season 1 is definitely Dewey's season, he's not the only person experiencing the family drama. It's a story that involves everyone. Season 2 would be unrecognizable without Louie at the center of it. All that said, there is an extent to which the arc is greater than the sum of its parts. Most of the individual episodes within it are really good, that's why they're still ranked very highly, but not mind-blowing, you know? Case in point, the season 2 premiere. Louie gets the family to do a game night to avoid adventuring. Most of the episode revolves around Gyro and Launchpad getting shrunk down during the game while Louie and Huey hide it from everybody. But it all culminates in Louie realizing what he's good at. He's the smooth-talking schemer, so he's got an eye for the angle. Scrooge and the show going forward would call this being sharper than the Sharpies, which is a cute little addendum to Scrooge's catchphrase that I think actually comes from somewhere, but I don't know what. It's a fantastic start to Louie exploring and cultivating what makes him unique, and plants that seed of following in Scrooge's footsteps of becoming filthy rich. I'm just a much bigger fan of where this storyline ends up rather than where it begins. Other fun things in this episode are, again, Scrooge acting like a crazy competitive old man over children's games, Dewey and Webby getting their friendship tested, Huey spiraling, and Gyro going mad with power. Number 20, Typhoon. Honestly, this episode and the last one are pretty interchangeable to me, but today my inexplicable love of time travel stories wins out. Louie's newest corporate venture causes a massive temporal storm. Once the smoke is cleared, Della puts her foot down as a parent and grounds Louie. This scene is the actual reason I have this episode ranked higher than the last one. This is a perfect intersection of 2 parallel arcs. Louie exploring what makes him special, and Della learning how to be a parent after being gone for so long. Among her kids, Louie has easily been the hardest for her to connect with as he is the natural cynic of the group, and it all comes to a head here. If you at all feel that the family should judge Della more harshly for her past actions, look no further than this one exchange.
You took off in that contraption without thinking about the consequences or the people you would hurt.
I wonder who I got that from.
Of course, it's Louie of all people who calls her out. Just 2 really strong characters trying to find their place in this family and choosing to butt heads rather than compromise. It makes for great TV. For the record, I think they're both in the wrong here. Louie should be more careful with his scheming, but Della should also be more understanding towards this kid that she doesn't actually know very well yet. But they'll get there eventually. The B-plot here is really just a big excuse to feature Bubba, a cave duck who was fairly prominent in the original DuckTales. He's fun enough, and I always enjoy a good Huey crash out, but I can see why the crew didn't really want to use Bubba that much. Number 19, The Great Dime Chase. Oh right, a Season 1 Louie episode snuck in here. But not just any Season 1 Louie episode, the very first one. Dewey got the pilot, Webby got Day Trip of Doom, Huey was meant to get Neverest, so now we get to Louie's big character-defining moment. On a trip to the money bin, Louie loses Scrooge's #1 dime and tries to use Gyro's little bulb to get it back. There are a lot of moving parts to this one, properly introducing us to the bin and its wacky employees, including Gyro Gearloose, Quackfaster, and to an extent Bradford Buzzard. But at the center of it all is forging Scrooge and Louie's initial connection that will define their eventual Season 2 storyline. They share a love of money, but Louie wants money the easy way while Scrooge is all about earning through hard work. So Scrooge works extra hard to try and instill that value in Louie. Louie's quest to recover the dime is a lot of Louie trying to take the easy way out only to be inevitably confronted with doing the work himself. But in the end, isn't it all the more rewarding to have done so? Despite this being a very early Season 1 episode, this really sets the stage for the greater arc of Season 2 and goes to show how consistently written these characters are throughout the show. But what really elevates this episode past the last few is that the B-plot here is Dewey and Webby investigating the archives to learn about Della Duck for the first time. Yeah, crazy that these two incredibly important storylines are stuffed into the same episode. I mean, this is the first true Dewey and Webby team up and the first we hear of the Spear of Selene. In the context of Della. I guess it was mentioned in the pilot, but Dewey just wrote it off at the time. So really, this episode can be considered the true starting point of both Season 1 and 2's overarching storylines, which is a crazy feat. Almost makes me want to bump it up a few more spots. Almost. Number 18, Happy Birthday Doofus Drake. Now, you really want to make something in this Louie set stand out? Bring in none other than Goldie O'Gilt. Of course this one was going to rise to the top of this bunch. It's not even a particularly impressive episode, it's just really fun to see these two play off each other. All the kids kind of have an older character they're often paired up with. Dewey has Launchpad, Huey has Gizmo Duck, Webby has Lena if you want to count that, but no one ever stuck with Louie, and I think that's because it was supposed to be Goldie. But she just naturally got fewer episodes, and the one she did get was obligated to wrap up her story with Scrooge. But I adore how Louie thinks that Goldie is going to echo his get-rich-quick philosophy, only to be beaten over the head with the cold reality that that sort of mentality is alienating and will leave you alone. I love the constant tug-of-war here. Goldie betrays Louie, then she steps in to save him, then he wants to leave her behind, but his moral compass won't let him. I just love seeing people who think they're too smart for compassion give into it. And it leaves Louie with that choice, to follow Goldie's path in life or Scrooge's. Also worth noting, I feel like Louie gets really invested in the idea of Goldie as a mother figure over Della, which is fascinating. The B-plot of this one is basically our mandated Della and Huey storyline where they play video games. But I find the choice to have Della as the B-plot here to be perfect. Louie was so wrapped up in finding someone who really got who he was and would work with him on his schemes that the person who is explicitly here to connect with him just fades into the background. I don't know if that was an intentional choice, but I think it adds a whole extra layer of intrigue to this story. Guess it's also worth mentioning the titular Doofus Drake, who is the main villain of an episode I really like, so I'm at a point where I think I just like him, but his big standout role is yet to come. I also enjoy Mark Beeks and Glomgold getting their bits in here, fun to play with a bit of a villain ensemble. Oh, and Boyd gets introduced here. Cool. But that should finally wrap up our little Louie set. We can finally move on. Number 17, Louie's 11. Oops, forgot this one. Okay, I guess this is a Louie episode, but like, not really. Yes, Louie sneaking the Three Caballeros into this exclusive influencer party is technically the A-plot, but that's really not the part of the episode I care about. I mean, it's still good. The Ocean's 11 heist vibes are great, Jose and Benjito are fun as always, I like the twist that the influencer is Mark Beek's mom, and I love Louie learning to give Dewey some goddamn credit for once. But we all know why this episode is really up here. The introduction of Daisy Duck and the budding romance with Donald that follows. I am not kidding when I say that since the day this show premiered, I have been asking for them to include Daisy Duck. They took their sweet time and ultimately, it paid off. Waiting to introduce Donald's love interest until Della's around to handle taking care of the kids is a great choice. Donald actually has time for this in his life now, and they went and made the healthiest version of this pair to date. Really, it all comes about from the newly characterized Donald just being a far more mature romantic partner. But Daisy isn't slacking either. That scene where they share their artistic passions with one another and form a genuine connection is so sweet. Love that Daisy genuinely loves Donald's singing voice and we get a glimpse of how she hears it. Just a really charming way to get these two together. I especially love this little double take she does when she learns about the nephews. Like, oh, you have kids? Well, okay, that's... okay. Oh, and Donald directing his anger to stand up for Daisy is so good. Oh, and Daisy exhibiting her own trademark rage during the battle. It's just such a loving adaptation of these characters and this relationship. This and New Gods on the Block are the only Daisy episodes we get, but they're both elevated so much because of how well done she is. I would have loved even more of her, but maybe this was better left leaving me wanting more. We got 2 banger episodes out of it, and that's alright with me. Number 16, The Golden Lagoon of White Agony Plains. Considering how much I just complimented Goldie 2 entries ago, it should come as no surprise that I love her premiere episode. This is one of very few episodes in the show that just completely sidelines all the kids in favor of a very intimate story between Scrooge and his old flame. Oh, and Glomgold's there too. It's just such a great window into Scrooge's past through a relationship littered with contradictions that somehow all make sense. Like, of course these two hate and love each other all at once. Goldie's the one person that can consistently stay one step ahead of Scrooge, and the thrill that adds to the chase for the gold is intoxicating. But really, this episode's up here because it has one distinct sequence of gorgeous animation. I love the Scrooge and Goldie tango fight. Great music, great choreography, the constant question of whether or not either of them are really intending to get a hit in. That right there is the whole appeal of the dynamic. Are they letting themselves fall for each other, or is this another deception so they can get to the treasure first? Glomgold might be Scrooge's most persistent rival, and Magica might be his most dangerous, but if you ask me, Goldie's the one that's truly at his level, and it's only her fondness for him that has let Scrooge survive any encounter with her. Shame that based on my ranking, I guess Goldie peaked early. I still love whenever she shows up after this, but nothing can quite top her shining introduction. Number 15, from the confidential case files of Agent 22. Scrooge and Webby go on a secret spy mission to save Beakley from Black Heron. This is one of the most important episodes of the show to me. The moment that Scrooge really started to consider Webby family. It's crazy that it took so long for this to happen. Both Scrooge and Webby already got dedicated episodes exploring their dynamics with each of the boys well before this. So in a way, they were the odd pair out, and naturally the least inclined to immediately hit it off. Which is ironic since she so obviously idolizes him. I love how awkward this opening scene is. After all this adventuring with him, Webby's gotten brave enough to sit down and have breakfast with the old man, and he doesn't know how to interact with her in isolation. Even less so when she's fangirling. But when Beakley's the one at risk, of course Webby forces her way into the mission. And over the course of their little adventure, they form such a genuine bond. It really all comes down to this one conversation after defeating the robot. Scrooge has finally managed to let his guard down and take a real interest in this strange girl he's been living with for over a decade.
You know so much about me, and I feel I know so little about you.
You know, while it is weird that it took so long for these two to really connect, I love that it feels like this could have never happened before the events of the show started. The triplets being in their lives have pushed both Scrooge and Webby to be better people. Scrooge is less shut in, less crotchety, more adventurous, and getting better at interacting with children. Webby's more sociable, braver, willing to put her skills to use, and generally more free to express herself. Only these versions of these characters would have been able to come together like this. It's no wonder they hardly interacted with each other the past decade. They both had so much growing to do first. But now that they're here, Scrooge especially gets to see how much he's been missing out on by not having Webby in his life. It all culminates with Scrooge being able to use what he's learned about Webby to their advantage against Black Heron and save Beakley. And of course, he tells Webby from here on out to call him Uncle Scrooge, and Webby in turn introduces herself for what feels like the first time. Up to this point, they've pretty much always called each other Mr. McDuck and Webbigail. We still get those from time to time, but they far more often call each other Uncle Scrooge and Webby. It's settled. They're family now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Honestly, 90% of the reason I hate the finale's twist is because this episode so perfectly sets up how Scrooge and Webby are family without the need for any blood relation. It's perfect. This episode's got a lot of other great stuff too. The flashbacks to the Shush mission with Scrooge, Beakley, and the always incredible Ludwig von Drake are excellent. It adds so much context to their modern day dynamic. Black Heron is a really fun villain. Glad they were able to bring her back in a big way in season 3. Using the gummy berry juice as the MacGuffin for this story is a really clever use of old Disney afternoon stuff. It all comes together to make one of the best episodes of the show, and it's number 15 somehow. Number 14, Double O Duck in You Only Crash Twice. You know, I think this episode and Beware the Buddy System are the only real dedicated Launchpad episodes we get. That's kinda wild. Anyway, this is the one where Launchpad gets super intelligence and goes full James Bond. This whole concept rules, if only because intelligent Launchpad is still somehow so intrinsically Launchpad. He's still got his unending devotion to Dewey and the Duck family. He still crashes vehicles. He's more than willing to dive headfirst into danger. He's just way smarter about all of those things. Which all works great with the central conflict for him here being his supposed inadequacy. Convincing himself even in his intelligent state that he needs to prove he's good enough. But Dewey, being a great friend, assures our boy that he's always been good enough. The whole dramatic sequence of Launchpad sacrificing his genius to this amazing vocal track is absolute cinema. It's all a genuinely sweet dissection of Dewey and Launchpad's relationship, and it's all presented through this epic spy thriller reacquainting us with Black Heron and introducing Steelbeak. Not to mention the fun Rescue Rangers cameo. I guess both the spy-themed episodes ended up back-to-back on the ranking. While I do think our last entry covered the more important relationship, this one's just way more fun while still being a strong character deep dive. But speaking of that other episode's relationship, Webby shows Scrooge skee-ball in the B-plot here, and it's hilarious. Again, Scrooge acting like a crazy old man is guaranteed to make me laugh. Love this microcosm of his life story told through arcade tickets and Webby needing to pull him out of it, all for the ultimate punchline that he spent way more actual money on this than what its value is. Last thing, I love that Launchpad Sleep talking about this episode is the way everyone learns about Foul's hideout, another perfect payoff. Number 13? Sky Pirates! In the sky! Dewey becomes the captain of the theatrical crew of Don Carnage. I have no logical way of describing why I love this episode so much. It's objectively really stupid. The whole conflict is that Dewey's starved for attention. But like, this one's about the vibes. This awakens the theater kid within me. I too wish to lead a swashbuckling crew of perfectly choreographed singing pirates. I sing this Don Carnage song to myself all the time. Maybe this is why I think they should have quit the Tailspin representation when they were ahead. I just love Don Carnage in this episode so much. This is probably also where more of my affinity for Dewey comes from. Bro is living my dream right now. Also, real talk, this fight scene on the ship with the intense red lighting, gorgeous. Love this whole sequence, especially with all the kids imitating Dewey and throwing everyone off. There's nothing more I can really say. This probably deserves to be like 10 spots lower, but this one's for me. Avast ye lads who be faint-hearted, we rule these skies uncharted, cruel and vicious hearties we, who sail upon the skies and not the sea. Number 12, Glomtails. Okay, remember way back when we were talking about Moonvasion? I believe I said we'd eventually get to talk about the satisfying, multifaceted conclusion Season 2 deserved. Well, here it is. Glomtails is such a perfect intersection of the three good storylines of the season. Louis and Della's conflict from Typhoon has resulted in Louis being grounded here. Meanwhile, Glomgold executes the ultimate scheme to bring together all of Scrooge's greatest villains and form a family that can destroy his in order to win the bet. It's just so perfect juxtaposing Glomgold's knack for scheming with Louis's. You actually believe for a second that Louis might earnestly help him win with all the drama that's been going around. But Louis is able to prove himself by turning the scheme back on Glomgold and show his mom that his gift isn't entirely selfish, but can help this family. It just puts such a neat little bow on everything. Della proves herself as a parent, Louis proves himself as part of this family, Glomgold makes his grand final stand, and it all feeds into each other seamlessly. And that's not even getting into the fun part. This is a big villain team-up episode. DuckTales has such a strong overall rogues gallery, so seeing all their massive egos try to work together is amazing. Glomgold's twisted little idea of a family being the connective tissue of the whole thing is a great bit, especially them constantly referencing this really weird picture of the Duck family. Like, it's obviously formatted this way so the villains fit in nicely, but why are Beakley, Launchpad, and especially Gyro of all people in this picture, but not Donald? Whatever, a goofy little compromise made so the episode works and can include all the best baddies. This is the legendary return of my boy Don Carnage. I love how everyone wants revenge on Scrooge except for him. He needs revenge on the spotlight stealer, Dewey Duck. Beautiful. This is probably my favorite appearance of the Beagle Boys in the show. They have a great running gag of treating Glomgold like their new paw. Mark Beaks is fun here, definitely better in a group than on his own. And of course, the ultimate return of Magica Dispel, who really gets to flex as a comedic villain this time around. Love everybody treating her as the real threat when Glomgold is clearly standing in front. The whole idea is just a really fun time. Foul scratches this villain team-up itch to an extent, but it's never as goofy and entertaining as right here in Glomtails. And let's not sell them short, they're also a surprisingly effective antagonistic force. Like, I know no one was home, but props to this group for being able to easily break through the mansion's defenses. That's not an easy feat. They're obviously a mess actually fighting the Ducks, but the fact that combined they were able to accrue more wealth than Scrooge is an insane accomplishment. If it wasn't for Louis turning it all around, they very well could have ruined Scrooge's life. So, props to them. They really outdid themselves here and earned that Season 3 break. Number 11, The Town Where Everyone Was Nice. It's the Three Caballeros episode. My fondness for it really doesn't go much deeper than that. Look, DuckTales does a lot of Disney references. I think in Season 1 they were a lot more understated or just bled into the inherent DNA of the show better, particularly the affinity for the history of Disney comics and the Disney afternoon. Those are all fine and good. I really appreciate it. But it's definitely not my personal Disney hyperfixation. I love Season 1 because there's still a genuinely amazingly written show amidst those references. But Seasons 2 and 3 seem to be a little bolder, taking from parts of the Disney canon that I do in fact hyperfixate on. Daisy Duck was one of those, but the first thing they pulled that really caught my eye was the Three Caballeros. These have been my guys for as long as I can remember. They don't come from great movies, but José's sequence in Saludos Amigos is such a beautiful piece of animation that endeared him to me instantly, and Panchito's explosive personality paired with the trio's iconic song solidified their place in my head rent-free. But even before I saw those movies, I was a big Caballeros fan thanks to their ride at Epcot. I've bemoaned this park in the past for the World Showcase being somewhat dull for children, but it's never a bad time hopping on that boat in Mexico to see these birds perform. Also, worth noting, I am Hispanic. I'm not Mexican or Brazilian, but it's still cool to see these wacky Disney characters speaking my language. They've become a permanent fixture of Latino Disney history that are consistently used in Disney projects to this day, and I appreciate them so much for it. So of course I loved them getting the DuckTales treatment. Even though they fuck up José's name, it's Portuguese, so it's pronounced with the actual J sound and not an H sound. A comment from 2 years ago taught me this, and it's bothered me ever since that every modern Disney project gets it wrong. Anyway, this episode really doesn't even have to try. A juvenile little story about all of them pretending to be more successful than they actually are? Sure, whatever. It's a big excuse to get the boys on stage for their epic musical fight. And it is a breathtaking rendition of the iconic song. I love how nice they make their friendship too. Donald doesn't get to just have a good time very often. He's the victim of so much slapstick nonsense and insane scenarios. But this scene where the Caballeros talk about life around the fountain and jam out is such a nice respite from all of that. I just love seeing them be cool friends. If you ask me, that's the biggest thing missing from that Legends of the Three Caballeros show. The context is wildly different, but it's why I find myself latching onto this iteration of the trio way more. Here, they're actually birds of a feather. They're happy amigos, no matter where he goes. I'm gonna stop before I sing again. Maybe it's unfair that this episode rises so high just because it's a love letter to the Three Caballeros, but it's my list, I do what I want. If you don't like it, well, you're gonna hate the next entry. Number 10, Quack Pack. Entering the top 10, you all know why this one's up here, but let's talk about the rest of the episode first. The family gets trapped in a generic sitcom. Overall, the parody's really fun. Love how into it Dewey is, love hearing Don Cheadle Donald, love the old school outfits for the adults. It's all a really great time. Kind of funny that this episode makes fun of my issues with Della in the show. When there's no plotline surrounding her, she doesn't really have a strong sense of purpose in the dynamic and just defaults to talking about her tragic past back on the moon. Fun of the show to lampshade this, but it doesn't really solve the problem in other episodes. Oh, also fun that this whole thing makes use of elements from the old DuckTales movie. They've actually referenced it before in the other Genie Lamp episode, which Louie does take a jab at.
How many lamps did this jerk have?
But it's great actually seeing Gene this go around. The references to Quack Pack and these horrifying humans is a great touch. This rotating shot of the whole family rules, the way they turn the rooms of the mansion into sitcom sets is great. Okay, enough stalling, it's Goofy! I'm not actually like a huge Goofy stan. If I'm ranking the Sensational Six, he's probably like 3rd or 4th, but I love a Goofy movie and the way they tie Goofy's characterization from that and Goof Troop into his appearance here. It all rides on that one scene of Donald and Goofy in Scrooge's office, which, for the record, is another instance of Donald getting to have a genuinely nice friendship just like the Caballeros. Donald, frustrated with his family's resistance to this more normal life he wished for them, gets the dad pep talk from Goofy reminding him that every family's got their own special kind of normal. Max, Roxanne, and PJ spotted. Anyway, one of the main inspirations for my What's the Best Version of Every Mickey Mouse Character video was this moment. This is effectively the best version of Donald and the best version of Goofy sharing a great scene together. Fascinating how both their best versions involve being in parental roles. It's what got the gears turning for what still stands as my by far most popular video. So I guess I owe a little something to this episode. So yeah, it's gonna start off our top 10 for being an amazing use of a legacy character and an all-around really fun concept. Number 9, The Shadow War, the Season 1 finale. We've talked quite a bit about Seasons 2 and 3's overarching stories, but despite having covered several major plot episodes of Season 1, only now talking about the finale do I feel the need to go in depth. I guess what's interesting about both sides of this season's serialized story is that it's kinda drip-fed to us in the background. Dewey discovering more about Della is often positioned as the B-plot of an episode. Lena getting the #1 dime for Magica is more central, but our protagonists remain oblivious to it the whole time, and progress isn't tangibly made until the end. I guess that's why a lot of episodes covering these plotlines are all over the place on the ranking with no real rhyme or reason. Compare that to seasons 2 and 3, where hardly any episode goes by without something plot relevant involved. But here at the end, I find season 1's ultimate conclusion to be so much more memorable and impactful. That's partially thanks to an episode we haven't talked about yet, but also because I think the lower key method of letting these plotlines bubble up in the background works wonders. It helps that there's only 2 plotlines to worry about, the mystery of Della and the rise of Magica, both of which come together beautifully here. The dramatic reveal of what happened to Della has driven the family apart, leaving Scrooge vulnerable to Magica's attack. Thus, the family needs to reconcile and come together to stop her. It's simple, but effective. Magica is truly outmatched as far as presence goes. Hiding her in the literal shadows until the big finale is such a perfect way to make her intimidating, and the personal stake involved with Webby and Lena adds that extra bit of delicious malice that makes fighting her so satisfying. And she's also hilarious throughout, a frightening balance. Love her trying to monologue off of her note cards. Ultimately, once he's back on his feet, Scrooge is able to dispatch her with ease, but that's only able to happen once the sins of the past are forgiven, and it's a full effort from the entire family to get to that point. Love Don Cheadle Donald here being a secret badass, love that all the kids get a moment to use their unique skills against Magica, including Louis swimming in gold, love the whole aesthetic of the shadows taking over Duckburg. It's all a really spectacular finale. I guess I've mostly been talking about the more action-packed side of this two-parter, but I especially love the more low-key first half. Webby, Launchpad, and Beakley working together to fix the family, the boys all giving up mementos from their adventures which are all actually from past episodes, the sea salt ice cream reference, yeah, you know damn well they stuck something from Kingdom Hearts in there, and my favorite scene between both parts, the kids all getting a moment to compliment Donald, who, with all the secrets of the past laid out, has proven himself to be the strongest member of this family, stepping up to take care of the triplets amidst a horrible tragedy. Which is why it's the most meaningful when Donald's the one to step up and put this 10-year-old's grudge against Scrooge aside so they can all be a family again. It's a beautiful moment. I don't know, man, seasons 2 and 3 are really great in their own ways, but nothing beats the raw emotional core of this season 1 storyline. Number 8, The House of the Lucky Gander. The Duck family visits cousin Gladstone Gander to free him from his magical luck prison. I don't know how this episode made it this high on the ranking. Like, I was ordering the episodes as I rewatched them, and at the end of that process, this episode was just up here. I thought I should move it down, but I just could not earnestly convince myself that I liked it less than anything below it. But why is that? I don't know. I guess Gladstone is a ton of fun and works great juxtaposed with the infinitely unlucky Donald. It makes perfect sense that Louis would be so taken with him so immediately, and the inferiority complex that Donald develops because of that is compelling. I guess this is the first real Donald episode of the show. Maybe that's why I like it so much. It's the show's first real effort to explore Donald's new characterization in a meaningful way. Once Gladstone shows his true colors, Louis recognizes Donald as the person who cares about him unconditionally and hypes him up for the final challenge. A nice little arc for the pair. On top of that, the setting's really cool. A magical casino run by a luck demon that seems designed to trap the Duck family here. It's all goofy, but the different attractions tailored to the kids' taste are great gags and fun red flags that'll tip a viewer off to what's going on. Plus, the punchline of finding the exit by the check-in is perfect. Oh, and every bit involving Gladstone winning every game and Donald's catastrophically failing is great. You'd think that'd get old really fast, but they always find some new and clever way to present it. And of course, I love Launchpad going on his own dramatic quest off-screen. Maybe that's why I like this one so much. It's really funny all throughout. The final challenge implementing all the elements from the casino is really cool, and Scrooge's last-minute manipulation to defeat Toadaloo High is a great way to showcase his adventuring prowess at the final hour, since he's been forcibly sidelined up to that point. The one-off DuckTales villains are usually great and don't get enough credit, but Toadaloo High is definitely a standout. He's so slimy and powerful, holding all the cards and relishing his good fortune. It makes him so satisfying to take down. Because the Neverest episode aired out of order, this is also the first globetrotting episode since the pilot, and that breath of fresh air adds another layer of mystique and excitement to the whole thing. Maybe that's why I like this episode so much. It's one of the earliest episodes that really feels like a cool adventure. I guess there are a lot of reasons I really like this one. A million relatively small compliments add up to a really stellar episode. Number 7, The Life and Crimes of Scrooge McDuck. I may not have loved the series finale, but the episode right before it rules. Scrooge is summoned to karmic court for the sin of creating his greatest enemies. Louis acts as his defense against the prosecution, Doofus Drake. I love everything about this. My Ace Attorney brain is going nuts. Glomgold, Mob Eagle, and Magica all testifying really makes this an appreciated last hurrah for the non-foul villains. We get to see just how Scrooge came to have so many lifelong rivals, which is such a treat, especially in the case of Mob Eagle. They've always talked about this backstory of Scrooge taking back the deed to Duckburg from the Beagles, but it's so much more fun actually getting to see it play out. Of course, the more commonly cited standout for people is Magica's testimony, and I can't blame them. The whole reveal of Magica's brother and how it ties into the character's appearance in the 80s show is so interesting and really paints a whole new picture of Scrooge. The whole conceit of the episode is a showcase of how much Scrooge has grown through the course of the series. Season 1 Scrooge could have never earnestly admitted to his wrongdoings and apologized. And I love how Louis gets an arc with Doofus demonstrating how he doesn't want to hold these lifelong grudges. Again, how do they keep using Doofus so well? The whole episode is such a perfect retrospective for the series as it approaches its final hour. It's such a solid little narrative. But what elevates it even further is just the vibes of the whole thing. This mystical karmic chord is so grand and imposing. Getting to see more pieces of Scrooge's past is always great. Louis using his sharp tongue in a court setting is a match made in heaven. And both of these characters humbling themselves before their enemies is so fitting given our next entry. Number 6, The Richest Duck in the World. Once again, the episode right before a season finale is the one I love way more. Louis becomes the richest duck in the world and is thus hunted by the Bombi. Coming off the heels of DuckTales, which effectively brought together the disparate threads of Season 2, the episode that follows focuses back on Louis, having achieved his lifelong dream. Honestly, most of the episode is easy to write off. Louis goofs off with his newfound wealth and gets into some hairy situations as the new CEO of McDuck Enterprises. Oh, and Della's off in the B-plot trying to communicate with Penumbra and finds out about the Moonvasion. Only bringing this up because they use Dewey tonight again. Love that. But it's the episode's ending that really makes the season for me. They could have ended it right here and I would have been more than satisfied. Louis meets up with Scrooge as the Bombi chases him. No one has been able to solve its puzzle. He cannot be bought, he cannot be fought. Though riches you've got, your life will be fraught until you have earned the one thing you have not. Even Scrooge was stumped by this and is of no help. But whether it be through fear, dumb luck, or just the truth seeping in, Louis shouts that he shouldn't be the richest duck in the world. In doing so, he realizes the one thing they have not: humility. I love how Scrooge initially laughs this off. So that's all fine and good, but oh, what really sells the whole thing, the flawless full circle moment calling all the way back to the first Scrooge and Louis episode, The Great Dime Chase. Louis offers the Bombi a shoe shine. Louis, for once in his life, actually puts his nose to the grindstone and works. Not just any work, but the thing Scrooge did as a child to earn his #1 dime. Louis even shows some compassion for the Bombi. This curse affects us both is such a quick but powerful line. God, this whole final scene is filled with great lines. When Scrooge takes the curse back and admits that,
You were a better billionaire than I was today.
ugh, it's so good! He's learned his own humility and expresses such a strong supportive attitude towards Louis' ambitions. Something about the Scrooge and Louis story specifically makes for such a strong through line. Season 1's The Great Dime Chase informs the entire Season 2 arc, which then informs their final outing in the life and crimes of Scrooge McDuck. It's probably the strongest consistent thread in the whole show, and I applaud it. Number 5, Let's Get Dangerous. I feel like I haven't been especially kind to the big Disney Afternoon love letter episodes. I mean, I've complimented the references throughout because they're fun, but I really put the Tailspin episode on blast and the previous Darkwing Duck episode. It's because Let's Get Dangerous sets the standard so high. This episode makes me want a full Darkwing Duck reboot. It was a bumpy road to get here, but it absolutely paid off and became my favorite episode of Season 3. Really, it all comes down to them just fully committing to it. Like, this is still an episode of DuckTales, and we'll talk about that, but it's designed first and foremost as a Darkwing Duck episode. We finally get the final member of the core Darkwing Duck trio, Gosselin. And the best part of the whole thing is just seeing that trio work together to fight supervillains in the streets of St. Canard. Kind of funny how each season has a different Darkwing Duck episode, and each one focuses on a different member of the trio. Beware the Buddy System is all about Launchpad, The Duck Knight Returns is all about Darkwing Duck himself, and this one's Gosselin's. The whole first half of this episode is about meeting Gosselin, getting a sense of her backstory, and revealing Taurus Bulba's nefarious plot. I love Bulba as a villain in this, suave and collected on the outside but manipulative mad scientist on the inside. The second half is when things really get rolling with our Darkwing trio in full gear and all sorts of wacky villains running amok. I love all these weirdos. Bush Rude, Quackerjack, Megavolt, Liquidator. For the purposes of this episode, they are just goons for Bulba to order around and keep the trio busy, but they are so much fun. Again, it makes me want a full Darkwing Duck reboot exploring them. But the core of the whole thing is Darkwing's devotion to helping Gosalyn find her missing grandfather. In a show like DuckTales that emphasizes family so much, it's perfect to have a story like this with a character like Gosalyn. She's so resistant to the prospect of letting anyone else get close to her because she's so focused on getting back the person she lost. She's also a really great time all around. They did a great job modernizing this character. But over the course of the episode, Gosalyn and Darkwing are forced to give up any hope of finding her grandfather and destroy the Ramrod. But together, perhaps they have a new little found family of their own. In the original Darkwing Duck, Gosalyn is Darkwing's adopted daughter, so I think the messaging here is pretty clear. Their story will eventually lead to Darkwing adopting Gosalyn and solidifying this new family of theirs, with Uncle Launchpad in tow, of course. I love this final line from Launchpad.
I'll spend my days in Duckburg, nights in St. Canard, and I'll sleep on the drive over.
It's such a satisfying little microcosm of this character. This episode had one goal, to make the audience fall in love with not just the character of Darkwing Duck, but the whole show concept, and for me it absolutely succeeded. That's all more than enough for it to earn its spot in the top 10, but then to add to it, all this has got so much cool and important stuff for DuckTales going forward. In terms of the overarching story, this is when the Ducks discover Bradford's secret role as head of FAL, as well as just FAL having returned at all. Plus, we get another missing mystery here with the Salego circuit. Love that despite the circumstances, they don't forget that this is still a DuckTales special, and they use this unique opportunity to move some pretty big pieces on the board. On top of that, there's a great throwback to the 80s DuckTales with the "Sea Monster Ate My Ice Cream" bit. What does Quackaroony even mean? We get another appearance of Dewey tonight, love to see it, as well as this cool moment of Dewey connecting with Gosalyn over their respective hunts for lost family members. Not intrinsically DuckTales related, but we get a Bonkers cameo, which is wild. All in all, this episode is stuffed with things to love. Season 3 might be my least favorite season with some major overarching problems, but when there's trouble, you call DW to deliver what's still one of my favorite episodes of television ever. Number 4, Woo! The DuckTales pilot is an anomaly. Thinking of all my favorite cartoons, the pilot episode almost never cracks the top 20. Pilots are usually doomed to be weird episodes, a strange exercise in both setting up the premise of the show, as well as presenting what a typical episode will look like in order to sell you on it. It's pretty much destined to be outclassed by later episodes. But something about the DuckTales pilot just blew every expectation out of the water. It was a cultural moment for cartoons when this pilot dropped. Disney was so confident that it would sell the show to people that they just put it on YouTube for everyone to see. It felt like everyone was talking about this incredible reimagining of a timeless classic. Now, 8 years later, I find myself with that same awe and wonder rewatching it. Going into this ranking project, I honestly thought the pilot was going to be unfair competition. It's too good. Hits every beat perfectly, introduces everything so effectively while being a ton of fun all the way through. Perhaps my decision to consider it a two-parter unfairly bolstered it even further. This is definitely the one most easily separated. Both parts even have completely distinct names with Woo and Escape to/from Atlantis. But when I first watched this thing, it was one big episode with only one title card, so that's how I'm counting it. The episode does benefit greatly from having these two halves, essentially a pilot for both the Duckburg and Globetrotting sides of the show. I feel like most people find the Atlantis half less memorable, but I still love it. It's our proper introduction to Glomgold, Louie helping Webby lie and the B-plot is great, Donald's covering for the kids in the background is really funny, we get our first real character development for Scrooge and Dewey learning to trust each other more. I love this final puzzle room that forces Donald to learn that same lesson. And of course, I love the final moments where Beakley and Donald admit to a bit of overprotectiveness, and the Ducks finally move into the mansion to start solving mysteries and rewriting history. It's a solid resolution to what was set up in the first half, and the pilot story wouldn't feel complete without it. But yeah, the first half is the best. We start off seeing Huey, Dewey, and Louie making Donald's life difficult on the houseboat. Probably the only time we ever see them acting like they would in the classic cartoons. Just three interchangeable pranksters making trouble. But even within that, we immediately see how distinct they are in this incarnation. I love this scene where Donald is driving to McDuck Manor and all the boys are sharing things they've heard about the elusive Scrooge McDuck. They each recall a legend that would of course specifically appeal to them. Dewey the Glory Hound recalls Scrooge carving his face into a rock giant, Huey the Brainiac recalls Scrooge solving a great mystery, and Louie the Money Man recalls Scrooge's ability to swim in gold. It's such a clean way to both hype up the legend of Scrooge McDuck while showcasing the fresh new personalities of the triplets. Then the rest of the episode emphasizes how far Scrooge has fallen since his glory days until the kids force him back into the fray. Not to mention Webby, who makes such a strong first impression by kidnapping the boys only to then fangirl over them. but we come to realize that her obsession with Scrooge derives from her own desire to get out there and explore. I think that's why this episode works so well. It's about a bunch of people who desperately want adventure in their lives and realizing that all they need is each other to make it happen. I even think that applies to Launchpad, who persistently reminds us that he's a pilot. God, this entry's already kind of long, and I haven't even talked about how fun the garage fight with all the different monsters is, the beautifully animated flight on the gold dragon, every kid contributing to defeating it, the swimming in gold payoff, the boys all doubting Donald's ability to do anything cool. It's such a fantastic episode. Honestly, I could see this making it to number 1 on a different day. It's certainly my favorite multi-parter. But today, there are 3 half hours that just barely surpass it. Number 3, Whatever Happened to Donald Duck? Dewey and Webby investigate Donald's disappearance. Is it a coincidence that most of the Dewey Denied episodes are in the top 10? Probably. Maybe. I can't tell anymore. This episode's kind of tricky for me to talk about because I've already talked about it at length in my Best of Every Mickey Mouse Character video. So do you all mind if I just copy and paste from that script? This video's taking so long to write and I could really use the easy entry. Donald in this series gets so much more to work with than he ever has before. He's the single guardian of the triplets and the show takes that role very seriously. Donald is a responsible parent looking out for the best interest of his kids. And you'd think that you'd lose something there, right? The main Mickey Mouse characters can often be used to fill whatever roles the story requires of them, and in Donald's case that tends to mean changing his personality pretty substantially because his whole thing is he's an angry, irritable guy. So, in things like Mickey's Christmas Carol, they kinda have to sanitize him in a way. But DuckTales doesn't really do that. Yes, Donald is a responsible parent, but he's still Donald. He goes into fits of berserker rage, he has terrible luck, he can be irritable and kind of a jerk. The show doesn't ignore these aspects of his character to make him more likable or fill the role of a responsible parent. They take those elements and find a way to build off of them. This episode is where they fully explore and execute on that idea. It's revealed that Donald's been going to therapy for his anger issues. They apparently stem from this idea that the world is out to get him, almost certainly a byproduct of his terrible luck, and that no one understands him. Do I need to explain that one? As much as I'm sure he'd love for his anger to just go away, it's not that easy. So instead, he's worked with his therapist to find a healthier outlet for his anger, and that outlet is protecting his kids from danger. That's so good! Layering the therapist's monologue over Donald discovering Lunaris' plan and flying into a rage to stop him from hurting those he loves, it's easily the best use of the Moonvasion plot in the show. Perhaps the whole thing was worth it just for this episode. And then the show tops that feat with Donald surviving a launch back to Earth that has destroyed every dummy tested on it. Through sheer force of will and desire to protect his kids, Donald makes it. Penumbra says it best.
There goes the bravest man on 2 worlds.
If it wasn't obvious, I love Donald in this show. I'm pretty sure every major Donald episode has been in the top third of the list. Hell, at least 3 of them are in the top 10. I have such an admiration for this character and how lovingly adapted he is. There are less Donald episodes in the show than you'd probably expect, but I think less is more in this case. He's not the central focus of the show, and he shouldn't be, but in episodes like this where they take the chance to do something great with him, magic happens. Number 2, The Last Crash of the Sun Chaser. Once again, the episode right before the season finale ranks way higher than the finale itself. Well, maybe not way higher, this time it's like 7 spots ahead. This is the one where the secrets of the Spear of Selene are all revealed. But can we talk about how cool this setup is first? This is essentially a bottle episode where the whole cast is stuck in the plane and they make such clever use of this setting. You'd think it'd get boring after a while, but constantly needing to counterbalance the plane to prevent it from falling makes each meticulous action a nail-biter. And it all escalates to Dewey climbing out on the wing in this intense sequence with gorgeous lighting and music. All the lines here are so good too. The whole time the kids are trying to put the last pieces of the Della puzzle together, Beakley is challenging Scrooge's ability to keep everyone safe, a perfect B-plot to mirror the tragic reveal that's about to take place. So Scrooge screams out,
I can't keep you safe!
And the kids over the walkie-talkie try to talk Dewey down. Ugh, it gives me chills even now. But then, of course, we get to the reveal. Della Duck, mother of the triplets, was lost in space after stealing a rocket Scrooge had secretly built for her. The kids all get angry at Scrooge in their own specific ways, reminiscent of that sequence from the pilot where they recounted Scrooge's legends with such fondness. You're the reason our mom is gone. You could have called her down, there were too many variables. You're the richest duck in the world, why didn't you send up more ships to look for her? I love that the plane loses balance here. Mechanically, it doesn't really make sense with the logic of the episode. Everyone's standing still, there's nothing to throw the balance off. but it's so perfectly representative of the familial bonds crashing all around them. Oh, and the real kicker.
This is a family matter. You are not family.
Years spent living in the mansion together, many an adventure together, that Call Me Uncle Scrooge moment in the Agent 22 episode, all of it in a fit of misdirected rage comes cruelly crashing down, and we get another pilot callback.
After everything I do for you, you're all nothing but trouble.
The tragedy that separated Scrooge and Donald for years, that hardened Scrooge to the point of never wanting to interact with his family again, it all comes flooding back. And the final shot of the episode is the cherry on top. A recreation of Scrooge's first ever comic panel, a visual statement of his reversion back to the crotchety old man who hates everyone. The ultimate possible low point for these characters. And then the credits roll, just as cheery as ever. God, I love some good fucking drama! It's why Pearl will always be my favorite Steven Universe character, why King's Tide is one of my favorite Owl House episodes, and why Season 1 is my favorite season of DuckTales. Nothing tops this perfectly executed storyline that just leaves you in shambles. In hindsight, each season really is so reflective of the triplet it centers around. Season 3 is a checklist for Huey, Season 2 is ambitious with tons of angles much like Louie, and Season 1 is still relatively simple, but it's packed full of raw emotional weight. And I don't know any other DuckTales character quite as emotionally vulnerable as Dewey Duck. No surprise that Dewey turns out to be my favorite. But despite all of that, this isn't my favorite DuckTales episode. Much like with Owl House, as much as I love the drama, I do instinctively have a much more positive episode topping the list. No surprise that Dewey turns out to be my favorite. If it wasn't obvious, I love Donald in this show, taking from parts of the Disney canon that I do in fact hyperfixate on. But today, my inexplicable love of time travel stories wins out. This show just doesn't miss when it comes to Christmas. All the signs were there. My favorite episode of DuckTales is Last Christmas. Oh wow, both the episodes with last in the title are on the top of the list, and there are no others that I'm forgetting about. I feel like the last 6 or so entries were all pretty standard, about what you would expect to be in someone's top 10 episodes, but this one's for me. If y'all don't know, I love Christmas. I love it to an unreasonable degree. By extension, I love Christmas specials. They so perfectly distill the magical messaging of the season into fun little adventures for the whole family. But man, even then, I could not have imagined how well DuckTales would do it. Right out the gate, the show makes it clear we are going hard into the Mickey's Christmas Carol references. Good. Much like the Three Caballeros, this was a piece of Disney media I knew all too well. More importantly, this was Scrooge's most well-known outing before DuckTales. Of course they should honor it in the Christmas special. I was Webby geeking out when Scrooge said, "Bah humbug." Seeing the different ghost designs echoing Jiminy, Willie, and Pete is so cool. Oh, and I'm such a sucker for time travel stuff. Yes, give me old Scrooge casually interacting with young Scrooge, Beakley dancing with the ghost of Christmas future, Duckworth forcing Scrooge to mingle with Bradford, shove it all down my throat. And then they have the gall to make the ghost of Christmas pass the villain in this chilling showdown around the lonely fireplace. Already perfect, 10 out of 10. And then they somehow went beyond. Dewey's half of this episode on its own is my favorite DuckTales thing ever. Missing his mom on what's supposed to be a big family coming together holiday, Dewey hitches a ride to the past to try and meet her. But first, we get young Donald voiced by Rusty Taylor doing the classic triplet voice. This is so fucking clever, I can't. How do real human beings come up with ideas this good? Rest in peace, Rusty Taylor. Your performances were endlessly iconic. So Dewey and Donald go out to search for Della. And you know, as much credit as whatever happened to Della Duck deserves for introducing the character, technically Last Christmas got there first, and endeared us to an innocent and not traumatized version. It is really satisfying to see Dewey, after hunting for answers about his mother for an entire season, finally getting to meet her. They don't terribly dramatize it, but it's so comforting all the same. And then the true Christmas messaging of this Christmas special seeps in. Scrooge, Dewey, and this young Donald have spent the whole holiday brooding and avoiding their families. Through Della, we get to see exactly how those families feel about that. All they want is to spend time with the people they love most during this time of togetherness and giving to show you care. So yeah, Dewey, we know you miss your mom more than anything, but there's a bunch of your family who's here and ready to show you that same love and support she would've. It's a perfect little Christmas message for a perfect little Christmas episode. And then the rest of the episode continues to have fun with the time travel stuff. The Wendigo pun is past saying "when to you go" is so stupid it's great. We all go back home where Donald knows exactly where Dewey's just been, and we see he's wearing the sweater Della got him that Christmas so many years ago. And the entire family sings Christmas carols into the night. Well, almost the entire family. Oh, and the credits are styled after Mickey's Christmas Carol. Ah, it's so good! Look, I know it's a bit of a weird episode to harp on so much. Half the main cast doesn't even get anything to do. But this just fills me with those cozy, comforting feelings that trump any and all rational thought. I could say that it has a really strong emotional core, it's a solid continuation of the Della plotline, it uses its Disney references so well, and all of that is true, but I love this episode because it makes me happy. Plain and simple. And right now, that's more than enough to call it my favorite episode of DuckTales. Well, that was a lot. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, maybe even hit the bell if you really enjoyed it. Last little thing, don't want to keep you here too long. I'm a dork, so I mathed out what my season ranking is by getting the average placement of each season's episodes. Season 3 is a fairly distant third, about 3 to 4 placements behind, but seasons 1 and 2 are neck and neck, only separated by a little over half a placement. Season 2 won out, which makes sense since a Season 2 episode's in first place and a Season 1 episode's in last place. I'm still gonna insist that Season 1's my favorite. I think it's a case where I like the sum of Season 1's parts more than Season 2's, but separately, I guess I do like Season 2's parts more. But you know, all 3 seasons are still really good, and the ranking exercise is an arbitrary excuse to talk about the show. Okay, bye!